watching India Development Debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar, and we are just hours away from the union budget, which will be announced at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Now, the government, a day ahead, has put out its economic survey, and the economic survey is an important sort of precursor to the budget. It gives a picture of the economy and the vision going ahead. The important takeaway from the economic survey and why it's key to look at it in the context of the budget presentation tomorrow is that it suggests that India has mostly recovered from the pandemic and its related challenges. The chief economic advisor also says that once global shocks begin to recede, India's growth story will really soar. Just a quick number on what has come out from the economic survey. The survey forecasts a GDP in the range of 6 to 6.8% for FY24 compared to 7% in the current fiscal. So there will be a drop. The range of the drop, of course, depends. The highlights of the survey are on your screen, and the government is optimistic that the Indian economy will remain a bright spot amidst a bleak economic scenario globally. We will talk about the survey. We'll talk about what you can expect from the budget tomorrow as well. But before that, let's listen in to what Prime Minister Modi said ahead of the budget session, and of course that comment coming in from the chief economic advisor.
आज के वैश्विक परिस्थिति में भारत के बजट के तरफ न सिर्फ भारत का लेकिन पूरे विश्व का ध्यान है। डावाडोल विश्व की आर्थिक परिस्थिति में भारत का बजट भारत के सामान्य मानवी की आशा आकांक्षाओं को तो पूरा करने का प्रयास करेगा ही, लेकिन विश्व जो आशा की किरण देख रहा है उसे वो और अधिक प्रकाशमान नजर आए। मुझे पूरा भरोसा है निर्मला जी इन अपेक्षाओं को पूर्ण करने के लिए भरपूर प्रयास करेगी।
Global economy slows down as IMF and many people project, then commodity prices should retreat because on the back of the monetary tightening that has happened in 2022. In that case, in fact, if you notice, many of the analysts in the Indian financial community are expecting a much lower wholesale price index inflation, etc., in the course of next financial year. So the baseline assumption is that inflation should not be as big a problem as it was in 2022, but we would concede that the uncertainty still remains high. It should have only a limited impact because ultimately domestic borrowing costs are determined by our monetary policy stance as well as domestic inflation rates. It will have an impact on external borrowing costs if the Federal Reserve keeps rising interest rates. I don't see it having a bigger impact on domestic borrowing costs. We are being prudent in not assuming that exports would be such a big contributor to growth as it was in the first decade. But if it does turn out to be wrong and the global economy does better, and given India's services growth and the manufacturing capacities being created and the efforts to plug ourselves into global supply chains succeed, and if export growth also kicks in, that will definitely see our potential growth rise from 7% towards 8%.
All right, so what is the economy looking like ahead of the budget? What are the expectations? To speak on this, I'm joined now by Aditi Nair, Chief Economist at ICRA, Sanjay Kumar, Partner at Deloitte, Ajay Bagga, Chairman of Elements Platform and Market Expert, also joins us on the show because it's truly been a tumultuous time for the markets as well. So too many factors for the markets to look at beyond the budget, but we'll come to that in just a bit. Aditi, let's talk about the macro numbers first. One thing that struck me as interesting and perhaps comment-worthy was the range for GDP growth that the economic survey lays down. It's quite a wide range, an 80 basis point difference between 6 to 6.8% with a base of 6.5%. How do you look at it, and is it reflective of the uncertainty that we face currently?
Thanks. Certainly uncertainty remains rife. I mean, it's not what we experienced in the last couple of years in terms of the pandemic or the sudden onset of the Russia-Ukraine war. But still, there are a lot of factors that are at play which do suggest that this year coming ahead is also going to be reasonably unpredictable. And, we have to be prepared for the fact that uncertainty may be here to stay for some more time. Particularly things like what the Fed is going to do, what is going to happen with China's own domestic growth outlook, etc. Now, I'm not going to argue with the fact that there is a range or that the range is wide. I think that's pragmatic, given the fact that the eco survey comes once a year. People like me, we can change our forecasts during the year, and we do based on updated information as and when it comes by. But the economic survey is a document which is going to be there for the year ahead, and so we really can't argue with the fact that they've given a range of 80 basis points. My own forecasts are at the lower end of this range. I expect that growth is going to be around 6% in FY24 in real terms. I feel that there are signs of the recovery remaining uneven, but that there are strengths in different pockets. And certainly there do seem to be parts of consumption where what was pent up earlier now seems to be getting more sustainable. And also, we are seeing some signs that private capex is becoming a bit more broad based. Next week, we'll get the capacity utilization figures for at least for Q2, and we are expecting them to be upwards of 74%. And 75% is typically the threshold after which we start to see capacity expansion becoming broad based. And that there are some signs of that which are available now. And these factors will support growth in the coming year. We also see a very strong pipeline of project completion ahead, which again should support growth, particularly if the project completion as well as capex by the center and the states can be upfronted in FY24 instead of being back-ended, which has been the case with the states in the current year. But exports is something where we are watchful and we're concerned about how intense the impact of the global slowdown is going to be, especially on the merchandise side.
So
Therefore, we are placing growth at 6%, which is at the lower end of the eco survey's range.
important to note that the IMF also came out with its World Economic Outlook, and they've retained their forecast for India at 6.1% for next year. So they've stuck to that as well. It's a wide enough range to cover any range of possibilities, to be honest. But the underlying theme was optimistic. There was no doubt about that. And a lot of that optimism is based on robust consumption displayed domestically in India. Sanjay Kumar, great to have you on the show. Do you share that optimism?
I do share. In fact, the growth of 6 to 6.8%, though it's quite wide, I do acknowledge that. But there are global uncertainties, and if you compare this with other geographies, other countries, you would find that they are quite far behind. So, government has been careful, but at the same time, they have been optimistic, and I do share that. And in fact, the Deloitte survey also pointed that out, that the industry is quite optimistic, quite upbeat about the growth in the future. And the pillars on which the government worked all through, as you also mentioned, private consumption and capital formation, on both they are doing quite well. So there should be a good growth. Export, as Aditi also pointed out, will be an issue. So let's watch out for that. But I am quite sure that given that they have already undertaken certain steps to improve the trade facilitation, things should improve. In any case, there are a lot of India is becoming part of the global supply chain, and the exports. Of course, it is not only about the finished product, but it's also the intermediate products, and it's important to be part of the supply chain. So if we continue to be on that journey, I suppose even the exports will start looking up. But 1 year is a long term, and there are a lot of headwinds, affecting us. Commodity price at the moment is looking good from our point of view. It's moderating, but since none of these in our hand, and we are a big consumer of those commodities, largely the petroleum and other products. So, so optimism is good, but keep our fingers crossed. And no doubt, 6% or 6.1 to 8% was something that the government put this. It's wide, but it's okay. Yeah, and it does
Final
give
figure. We'll wait for the figure that will emerge tomorrow as well. This is the trailer. The main show is yet to begin. So we're setting the stage here. Ajay Bagga, you know, markets love to say budget is a non-event. We just hope that they don't do anything to harm us. But it's been such a hectic week and a few days for the Indian markets. What is the market looking at as far as the budget is concerned, or is the focus also on the Fed meet, which will take place a few hours, several hours later?
The Fed meet is more important. Why the budget's importance has reduced, Tamanna? Because the indirect taxes, the leeway has gone away with GST. It's more a GST council, and you will not get the changes to liquor or petroleum products that are really needed as the next reforms on GST, or a reduction in the GST rate, what Kelkar committee had said, a 12% single number. I think we are still at very high numbers. So having said that, what the market will look at, I think 6.5 is the base case that the economic survey has given, and that will be the base on which the budget maths will be done. So that's talking of something like 300 lakh crores of nominal GDP for next year. That will be the base that we will start with. And we will look at how much is the fiscal deficit, what is the quality of the spend. We are expecting the capex spend to go up very sharply in double digits, hopefully 20%. The revex to be kept in control. So we are hoping for a more prudential budget rather than a populist budget. The government has about 1.5 lakh to 2 lakh crores of subsidy savings in its pocket, which versus this year's forced spends because of the prices having come off. So how is that used up? And we are running into a debt trap today. Out of our revenue collections, 40% is already going into interest payments. So add on salaries and pensions, a large part is today is being spent on day one itself. It's an assured spend. So somewhere we have to find more revenues for the country, and that can only come through more productivity, which will come through more infrastructure and public capex spends, and the private capex, what Aditi was mentioning, private capex catching up. Yesterday, if you heard the earnings call of L&T, out of an order book of 3,85,000 crores, they mentioned 32% is public capex, and the rest is private capex. So that's a good indicator from your largest infrastructure company that private capex seems to be catching up. But a lot of that is in the renewable segment, and we don't know how much of that is current year and how much will be multiple years. It's an order book, after all, which could be 2 to 3 years in the making. So overall, market, you summed it up quite correctly. No nasty surprises on capital gains or something. Already dividends are being taxed doubly. So hopefully not much of a nasty surprise. If some relief is given to the middle class, and in terms of the threshold for the income tax being raised, that will have a minor fillip. My own forecast for this year is a little more pessimistic. It's more 5.5%. What will help is towards the last quarter of the next year. So next
You're referring to GDP.
GDP, yeah, 5.5% GDP growth instead of 6.5 base case. What will help is when the national elections come by, and so many state elections, a lot of money gets transferred into the voters' pockets by in terms of spending increasing by the political parties, that normally gives a fillip to consumption. So hopefully that will come in, but that's again back-ended. I think we are going to see some kind of challenges, and I'm not very happy with this 5.5. If China at $18 trillion of economy can deliver 5% in this year, we should be doing at least 8% on a real GDP growth basis. If we have to really take people into the middle class and improve our per capita. So
Right.
this is not very great. And a 5.8 fiscal, Tamanna, if you add on the state fiscal deficit, you're looking at 8.5, 8.8% kind of combined fiscal deficit, which is very high, which is inflationary, which will keep interest rates higher for.
Let's talk about the fisc a bit and how that number will be seen, Aditi. Let me come to you on that. 6.4% is the target. There's very little doubt that we'll hit the target. The finance minister has said that publicly and seems fairly confident. Is the key figure for you what the forecast is? How we're going to move towards a path of fiscal consolidation going forward? And if that is going to take precedence and priority, then all these hopes of tax relief, etc., do they go out of the window?
So, as far as FY23 is concerned, we think there's going to be a minor overshoot in absolute terms for the fiscal deficit, but as a percentage of GDP, we are quite confident that the government is going to be at 6.4%, if not a slight shade lower than that. Now, the big question is for FY24, what is the balance that the government chooses to work in terms of boosting capex, benefiting from the lower subsidies, as Mr. Bagga just said, and then what is the level of fiscal deficit that they want to target for next year? We think that with a nominal GDP growth of about 10% and a similar growth in tax revenues and the cut in fertilizer and food subsidies that we're expecting next year, capex should be able to go up to 8.5 to 9 lakh crore. And also beyond that, are we going to be able to absorb it in a single year? So having a very high capex number, which is not absorbable, may not really help matters. Similarly, on disinvestment, we've assumed that the target should be about 50,000 crore, which is not very high. It will lend credibility to the fiscal deficit target. And if there's a small miss, it really doesn't hurt the budget math if you're at 50,000 as far as the budget estimate is concerned. So with this, we think the fiscal deficit can be targeted about 5.8% of GDP next year. Then the next question is really going to be, where are the gross borrowings pegged for next year? The gross and the net borrowings. And added to that, what are we going to see from the states, both from the fiscal deficit point of view and for their borrowing point of view? Now, this year, we had a large borrowing number for Government of India. We've had large numbers indicated by the states in their indicative calendars that they published through the RBI. But so far, we've seen that the actual borrowing by the states has been much lower than what they had indicated for a variety of reasons through the year. And that has actually helped to keep overall yields in check because the supply coming in from the state governments has been on the lower side. Now, if that's the case again next year, then it's going to be a little counterintuitive in terms of the capex boost from the states that we're hoping for. Another factor that we're going to be looking out for is, for this increase in the capex to 8.5 to 9 lakh crore, like I'm saying, and I think Mr. Bagga is probably expecting 9 lakh crore as well. Where does this go? Do we see another increase in the interest-free capex loan to the state governments? What is the absorptive capacity of that? Or does it go to sectors, rather to ministries of the Government of India itself? So that's also going to have some implications on the assessment for the rollout of the capex and whether it is expected to be front-loaded. So these are some of the things that we're going to be looking forward to. I think the bond market is certainly really going to be looking forward to the borrowing number that comes out tomorrow.
Number is key. The fiscal deficit glide path will be key. Sanjay Kumar, let me come back to the big question. At least a cosmetic sort of tinkering with direct tax rates to give the perception of some relief, a sweetening of the new tax regime, perhaps that is being widely expected. What is in your checklist to watch out for?
So, Tamanna, if you see that on the corporate side, the rates were lowered, and now I think we are quite competitive internationally. So I would not think that there would be changes in the corporate rates, corporate tax rates. And in any case, if you see the tax to GDP ratio for the corporate tax, it's actually going down. And so it will be important for the government to continue on this path, at least, if not boost it for more. And they should be looking at some of these revenue forgone, because it at the moment continues to be between 16 to 17% of the tax collected. So the issue will be twofold. One, how do I get more investment so that more companies come and settle down here, and so that we have more of these corporation tax. Personal income tax, which has been doing quite well, could be a candidate where we may see some, if not the tax rate changes, at least have some deductions, something which could bring more money in the pocket of a common man, and that is something which the government could be looking for. And even if we try and index it with the inflation, it seems to be a candidate where either the real estate interest rate deduction, or increasing the PPF Social Security contribution, or medical insurance, all these could be enhanced, and which will give more money in the hands of the taxpayer. But major tax rate change, I am not really thinking. But I always expect that we should have one, because it affects each of us.
Absolutely, and those rates are now very redundant compared to the current inflationary rates. Those standard deduction or exemption rates are from a era gone
Yeah,
by.
go ahead.
Yeah, compared to what the costs actually are. So there's no doubt it's a candidate. Debaga, it'll fit in very nicely with a pre-election budget, and no one will even call it a revdi because it impacts everyone. The argument can be that this actually boosts consumption, so good for the economy, not a revdi, not a political sort of move.
Yeah, I would go even further, like what the Scandinavians did, that if you have a housekeeper, you have a nanny, you get a deduction for paying salaries to them. I'm saying give a deduction to every household that buys a new two-wheeler, that buys a new consumer durable, that hires, your e-shram workers. If somebody of the 28 crores, workers, unorganized workers already registered on e-shram, if you hire them, you can deduct it from your income tax. I think those kind of sobs to the salaried, allowing a higher offset for children's education. Look at the school fees, the college fees. I think more, it's a lot of hard work which the bureaucrats normally don't like. They just give a number. Health insurance, for example, 25,000 is nothing, Tamanna, given what hospitalization costs are, what a family floater today costs if you want to cover critical illnesses. Uh, that Section 80D needs a dramatic increase to safeguard the population. We don't have penetration as it is. At least the ones who are buying, they should be allowed more on Section 80D. Again, I would agree with Sanjay, not much of expectation, but whatever comes, we'll take it. Just don't tinker with the investment, sentiment by changing anything on the capital gains tax or any of these things. I hope nothing, no adventurism comes on that. Faceless assessments, we need some kind of more rigor to come into it. It is causing a lot of friction in the economy with, untutored and very exploratory demands being sent still by untrained junior level officers. So those are real things. I don't think any of those will be addressed in the budget. That's why I'm saying the significance of the budget is now limited to the budgetary maths, the capex. Where will, what Aditi mentioned, where will that capex be targeted to? And overall, we will hear a few quotes from saint poets of Karnataka because Karnataka goes into elections. So you can hear some saint poets of Karnataka being quoted, and that will be it.
One of those countries where the whole budget exercise is more than just an accounting exercise. It's a vision statement, an achievement list of the government, and maybe some political messaging all rolled into one. So we will be unpacking all of those aspects for you tomorrow all day on ET Now. So do stay tuned. Meanwhile, I want to thank all of you for joining us on the India Development Debate tonight. Thank you.